Hey everybody, welcome back to Northernlion Kerbal Space Program. We are gonna get back to it by doing some satellites, I think. I'm just gonna be real with you. This looks impossible. Please note that this must be a new unmanned probe. The contract is position satellite in a specific orbit of the moon. But look at the orbit specifics. It goes down to the meter. Apoapsis is 1,314,427 meters. Periapsis is 878,691 meters with an inclination of 56.4 degrees. That is crazy talk, dude. How am I supposed to get... I can't even... If it was like get it within 1,000 meters, I would still be like, that's pretty tough. But get it exactly seems unreasonable. Maintain stability for 10 seconds. Reach the designated orbit with minimal deviation. Okay, you know what? Maybe that's where we get it. Minimal deviation. KSP. What does that mean? What is the specific orbit tolerance? You have to be within something like 5 meters? That's too much. Oh, and you have to be going in the right direction. Okay. 5%? Some of them are way too strict, some of them are pretty easy. Dude, okay. Like, let's just start. Be more reasonable. Let's just launch a satellite. What is a satellite? Well, I think I did actually read some tutorials online. We'll start by just launching a basic satellite into, like, Kerbal's orbit. So we'll just call this, well, we've got to put something on it first. So, we need an unmanned launcher, and I think the only unmanned, like, command module we have is the Sputnik model here. So we'll just call this, like, Kerbin satellite, or probe. I guess they are two different things. Bar version 0.1. Okay. Designed to get into an orbit around Kerbin. We're just writing our user stories. Stay there indefinitely. Transmit data back. Requires antenna and power. Okay, so what do we need to make this work? Well, it needs to have some kind of antenna attached to it. This has no actual communications ability just by itself. It's just a big old tell us world of science right there. Hot air balloon. What do we need a probe to do? Well, essentially we have to launch it. We have to get it into orbit. Well, I guess for a satellite we have to get it into orbit. And then the orbit has to be stable, and then it has to be able to indefinitely stay in space while having enough power to actually make it useful for the indefinite length of time that it has to stay there, and also periodically transmit data back to Kerbin. I guess the goal in the end is that we have, because we're going to be traveling ideally to deep space, we want to have an array of satellites that can basically allow us to transmit data. Like, let's say we're like way far out. You know, we're in like, we've escaped from Sol, basically. We're out of the solar system. We want to be able to have our ship ping some scientific data back to a satellite that's on, like, this game's version of Neptune, and then back to this game's version of Jupiter, and then back to this game's version of Kerbal, for example. I recognize that there's more than 3 planets in our solar system. I don't know the upper bounds for transmission. Hot and fresh out the kitchen, mama, rolling that body, got every man in here wishing. So we do need basically like an upper stage that allows us to function properly here without any fuel associated with it, because I don't think we ever want this to come back. Although we're just going to be filling the world with space debris. So we do want to put like some kind of antenna on this thing. And the whole purpose of the antenna is, I mean, first off, it would be ideal if it was, like, pointed straight up. Yeah, it's, like, not even close. You accidentally created the Jack-in-the-Box logo here. Okay, you keep making the same mistake here. It's getting a little... Because we want to do something like... I mean, you know what? It's slightly off-center, but I'll take it. That's fine. Then, what do we need to keep it in space? We need some form of power. So, one of the ways that we could do this is via rechargeable battery packs. But we're still... I don't know how they're going to recharge without an engine. So, I think we're going to need photovoltaic panels. Simple panel with no sun tracking or deployment mechanics. As a result, it's very light and cheap. Well, the problem is, during launch, these things might shear off. But if we launch slowly enough, we might be fine. I suppose we could also protect these during launch via, like, the aerodynamic cone or something, and then drop the aerodynamic cone once we reach a certain height, and then these will be fine. So I almost think, like, I know we want our satellite... Dude, this is actually bothering me. I know we want our satellite to be as small as possible, I suppose, so that our launches are as efficient as they can be. I'm losing it. Please. God. Oh, my lord. Okay, you know what? That's fine. I suppose there's other antennas we could use if we get truly, like, crazy anal about this. Like that, for example. Although that will probably shear off during launch. I don't know. Maybe this is a more sensible approach. Either way. You know, we know that the Communitron has worked just fine. That's not centered, but it's relatively good. Okay, okay. We probably have other view models that could work for us there, but disregard. So we need to find some way to generate power. I think voltaic panels make the most sense. So what I'm going to do there is maybe attach, like, a service bay. Probably not a Rockomax service bay. Do we need to put an adapter here, actually, now that I think about it? Because this, how is this going to connect? That's not in utility, in structural. FL10 adapter? It is, okay. We need something like this. And then inside of the service bay, we're just going to open this up. And I want to put a bunch of rechargeable batteries in here. I don't know if we need these ones or we need the other battery packs. I think it's probably fine either way. I mean, this thing's... If we're being realistic, we're not going to be transmitting too much data, is my guess. We might as well... I mean, in theory, we want to put, like, science in here. But I don't think we need to do this for something that's going to be in Kerbal's orbit, because we've already gotten all the science, I think, that we can get from Kerbal's orbit. So let's close the service bay. And then we will also attach... This is where I get a little finicky. Like, I don't know if this is necessarily going to work. But I think we should attach some photovoltaic panels. We might not be able to... Oh, we can attach them to the service bay, which is actually great. So this is our satellite. It's not a fantastic looking one, but it seems like it might get the job done. And then, I mean, this is also like a first cut, basically. So then we're going to go to our structural setup, or sorry, decoupling, and we're going to take a stack decoupler, as we often do. And now we need something to get this into orbit, and this thing should be wicked light, man. So I don't know if we even need 2 stages. But I'll give it 2 stages regardless. I mean, I'm telling you, I really doubt we need something like this, but we have been using that routinely here, so maybe we'll just give it a try real quick. So we'll take our Rockomax adapter, and I mean, it is aerodynamic. It's going smaller to large as it goes down here. Maybe, I don't know. And then we need a fuel tank, which is this. It has been a couple of days since I've played as well. Now, this might be enough for us to get up there. My guess is we'll probably need a little bit more. So, even though this might seem almost like a backslide as far as our Kerbal Space Program play goes, essentially, I am just going to double this stage. And then we'll beta test this, basically, to see how this works. You know, we're going to do some rapid prototyping. That's what we call it in the rocket science industry. So this rocket is, like, way too large to send a satellite up in all likelihood, but it's simple, which is another thing that I'm going for. Finally, we want some kind of aerodynamic shell, which is in payload, I think. And the way that we're going to try to get this to work is, like... Oh, right, okay, first. Like, put this here. And then we basically want it to cover... Like, it has to cover this. And then we want it to come in, but coming in at a nice angle would be ideal. Okay. Now we've essentially created the Space Needle. Pardon me. Finally, we want to take like some Delta Deluxe winglets. And by we want to, I mean I am making the assumption that we want to. Do we actually want to? The answer, of course, is that I have no idea. Alright. So here's how I want this to pop. First stage obviously just fires. Decouple, second stage obviously just fires. Then we lose this thing and this thing. And the second stage should be enough fuel to get us into a circularized orbit around Kerbin. This is really like, again, just a test to ensure that we have kind of like a model for a satellite that actually functions. And it's relatively cheap, although probably overly expensive relative to what a new player would, relative to what a good player should be functioning with here, is what I mean. No operational SAS modules and no pilot. So we gotta hope that this thing just flies straight, I guess. Put the throttle at max. Right? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so nobody died in the creation of that one. That's a very common Kerbal Space Program mistake that I'm guilty of. We're gonna put the launch stabilizers up here. We're gonna max throttle, space. We want this thing to stay as straight as possible, effectively. And it's got a pretty nasty lean to it already. But it is, like, we can fly it. I want that to be, like, readily apparent. We don't have to just hope that it goes in the right direction. But it is, like, a little unwieldy. And by a little, I mean, like, extraordinarily unwieldy. I'm also, like, extremely skeptical that we're going to get enough fuel out of this section. So we need to add, like, a little bit of finer control here. I don't know if we have any technology to have an unmanned probe actually have SAS yet. We might have to get the next level of science for that. Oh, it's going. It stopped going. I wonder why it's so imbalanced. Obviously, this is the least efficient way to actually, like, go to space. Like, we're gonna go in, like, the anti-normal orbit, which is my way of pretending I know what I'm talking about by using a term like that. We're gonna get, like, a ridiculous amount of thrust on this next phase, so I would say be careful. So, obviously, like, this is going real well right now. Remember, the goal here is, hilariously, we want to have enough fuel to get us in a circularized orbit. And then, our satellite should function at that point. Yeah, totally. Are you, like, okay, we're out of the choppy air, so it's, like, almost flying straightish. Hold this down for a second. APOAP's 102,000, that's, like, way too high. So I believe what you can do now is actually just add a maneuver node. Want to pull this out to get a relatively circularized orbit here. And I think this is pretty okay. How much fuel do we need? 52 seconds. Do we have 52 seconds of fuel on this stage? I would say probably not. But I'll tell you what, let's, no, not hibernation, sorry. Get the... You know what, first, point yourself towards this maneuver node. Because you need to. So I would say there's a lot wrong with this setup right now. In case it's not, like, the clearest thing in the world. I don't really want to use fuel, but we need some to just keep ourselves going here. Even if we don't get into a completely circularized orbit, it might be okay just as, like, a test. Not having any SAS is a killer, dude. So at about 25 seconds, we're gonna try to go for this burn. So just give me a minute to. Okay, like but you're spinning, so it makes it really hard to click on the. Oh, I had it for a second. Anyway, we gotta go. Dude, no SAS is killing me here. Oh, Lord. I really thought this would be like a nice little easy episode. And it still might be, but, maybe a little too much thrust. I mean, we could just slow it down, right? And then it might be a little easier to control. We got 9 seconds of fuel left, so I think we actually, like, may hit orbit. We need to hit it a little bit more. 43,000 is not really like a stable orbit. Probably. Especially with our antenna out there, you know? How about now? 63,000. I actually think this is good. I'm not suggesting that there's like any, you know, I should be commended for this. I don't think that's fair to say. But I will say, like, hey, man, look at that. It's a satellite. Potentially. So can I not just see the components list, like, on here? And then, because, like, I can't, see, the thing is, I can't, why, yeah, I know, you can't submit science because you don't have any. See, the problem is I can't click on the antenna because you're spinning or extend antenna. Okay, so, I mean, like, this should now function. We also need to detach. This is where a quick save is in order, I think. Detach. And then also detach. And this is our satellite now. I'm gonna be honest with you. It doesn't really look like my traditional interpretation of a satellite with the, like, photovoltaic arrays extending out, you know, spinning around up here. It definitely looks more like a probe. Because, you know, a probe, I guess, designed to be not in a circularized orbit, instead just flying into space forever, basically. But it is a satellite. Like, we have no data to transmit right now. But it is a satellite, and it's operational. I wouldn't mind. I don't think we have any control over it. Like, there's no fuel, basically. I was gonna try to get it to stop spinning, but can we look at our electric charge? And I just want to see, like, how these panels are doing. They are getting some sun exposure. I don't know if 1 is the highest level of sun exposure, but this thing, in theory, might be able to function, like, forever. So, again, not necessarily suggesting that this is the best satellite in Earth's history, but hey, check it out, dude. We got a satellite into orbit. Thanks, physics. So there is a flight computer as well. Open the flight computer. This is from remotetechnologiesgroup.github.io/remotetech/tutorial/firstsat. Open the flight computer by clicking the calculator icon below the mission clock. Mission clock. All right, we're going to save that for a later day. That might be part of a mod or something because, I mean, this, I can't imagine this is not the mission clock. I mean, I'm a silly boy, but at the same time, that is a mission clock right there. So if we go to our tracking station, check it out. Kerbal satellite. Orbiting just fine. Doing a great job. Now, I don't know if there's any reason to put a satellite in orbit around the moon, but I'm gonna put a satellite into orbit around the moon, or at least try to. And the reason for that is just to prove that we can. I don't know if we need one around the moon, one around Minmus. One thing's for sure, though. I think if we put it around the moon and we put one around Minmus, easy science, maybe, that we can transmit, or we can maybe try to test our scientific... Not our scientific, sorry, but our communications network, basically. Apparently, you also need a relay network to visit other planets as well, basically, or to get data back from other planets, regardless. Because otherwise, you know, if we go to Duma, which is like a million years away here, you know, there you go, Duna. It's going to be too far for us to transmit data back, so we need kind of the network to begin with. Now, does having a satellite around the moon functionally increase our range? Probably not by much. But, moon satellite, you ever consider that? Anyway, leave facility. So we've got tweaks, without a doubt, that need to be done to our rocket. For one, I mean, it's unstable. I don't know exactly why, but we could buff it up with maybe a few more control surfaces. No. Generally speaking, what I've heard is that the more control surfaces, the better, as long as they're on the bottom stage of the rocket. Now, that might be incorrect, but this is what I heard, okay? Now, instead of also doing that, because this is, it's just not very good, is probably the way that I would describe it. We could probably get away with just adding another stage on top of this rocket, but that's not really necessarily what I'm looking for. We could add another stage that takes us, because this gets us into orbit. We could add another stage that takes us from orbit to lunar orbit. Or we could add a stage on the bottom that allows this to be our final stage at the top here. Now, do we need a skipper on the final stage? Probably not. But in some ways, I'm kind of like, why not? Take a crazy chance, why not do a crazy dance, right? I don't really want to mess with this, but I do want to put science in the service bay if possible. I don't know, mystery goo is not the only science, but we can... Usually you can fit like some mystery goo in here. Kind of wish we didn't have this aerodynamic nonsense. We only need like, you know... Let's be honest, this thing's gonna be in there forever. Why don't I just put like one mystery goo in there? And then you go, you know, yeah, put a too hot thermometer in there. Of course, you gotta put a press mat barometer in there. Okay, close the doors, please. So what I'm actually gonna do is add a stage at the bottom. And I'm gonna do this in a way that is atypical of what we've done recently, but... Yeah, like, that's no good. Or maybe it is, I don't know. What about the... Whoa, dude! Now that's a booster! Get out of here, tri-coupler. Nobody likes you. Look at this thing. My lord. You gotta give this a shot. We must have just unlocked this recently, otherwise I feel like I would be a little bit more aware of the situation. So it's in coupling. We're looking for Rockomax. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. I want you in my room. We'll spend the night together from now until forever. Okay. So I don't know if this is gonna be enough, but it looks freaking sweet, man. And then we're just gonna basically do what we did last time, except with more control surfaces this time. And I recognize, like, we're kind of jutting up against the architecture of the engines here, but... Yeah, that looks, like, extremely stable. Definitely, dude. I think it's because this thing is not 100% symmetrical along the same axis. But anyway, this is irrelevant for the time being. Throw this down here. Then we're going to call this Kerbal Satellite version 0.2. Designed to get an orbit around Kerbal. Let's just call it, describe it this way. Designed to get an orbit around near Kerbal bodies. Okay, so the goal for this, well, let's just make sure we got this set up properly. So it's gonna go like, we also might want to put like some RCS ports at the top and some monopropellant in here, but let's just leave it as is for now. Keep it simple for the time being. We'll litter the atmosphere with satellites not too long from now to begin with. Okay, so we got these, this fires, yeah. Then it goes, and then this fires. Cool. And then it goes, and this fires. Yeah, I mean, this seems right to me, so we're going to save. We're going to launch. Remember, there's no SAS, so we have to fly this, which is harrowing. It did work last time, but it wasn't good. Oh, this has way, way too much power. It's relatively stable. Yo, that booster is 10 out of 10. I do not at all want to try a gravity turn because I don't trust us to do it without SAS availability. This booster is going to revolutionize my existence here. It's a solid fuel booster you can control. Now you can have your phone and eat it too. And the fuel in it lasts forever. And by the way, did you see how, despite the fact that this thing's heavy as hell, it, like, easily lifted us off to the point that I'm actually, like, perturbed by the speed at which we made it up? This is amazing. Our apoapsis is at 30,000 already. This is, like, extremely overkill for a moon satellite. Do we even have satellites around the moon? I'm not even joking. Like, that's a question I literally feel 0% guilt for asking. Do we have satellites around the moon? I would assume yes, just because, you know, there's some degree of science that's like, if you can, why wouldn't you, right? But is it necessary? Are we sending Game of Thrones episodes up, bouncing them off a satellite on the moon and then sending them back down to a different part of Earth? Or are they just like, it's close enough? Moon, 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 I want to get to moon. We'll send you some data, and you can send it back. You know, but now at this point, you gotta finish it. Moon, 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 moon. I want the lunar moon. I mean, obviously, it is a lunar moon, of course. Anyway, we should get to like a good apoapsis around like 80,000, maybe. Dope. Great job, team. All right, then, and by team, I mean me. Ha ha ha. And also that tutorial on GitHub. Add maneuver on the shoulders of giants and all that. Get this thing around. We're looking for a circularized orbit, please. Roughly circularized, you know. Rome wasn't built in a day. 39, 89. Honestly, dude, it's like relatively circular. Much more circular than I usually get. Could probably make it even more circular by just putting it like at apoapsis. 143, 32. That's way worse. What have I done? Now I've done it. Probably supposed to be doing the maneuver like 10 seconds ago. 37, 138, 56, 197. I mean, we're at apoapsis, so we need to burn. It's not going to be perfectly circular. Luckily, we were... I mean, this... I'm not going to say there is no excuse for this, but we probably should be at the point where we're able to get a better orbit than this, but orbit also has kind of a lot of tolerance for messing it up a little bit. At least in contrast to the way that we were doing it earlier. Just let me extend you, please. Thank you. Still need to burn for another minute, so I don't know if our master plan really worked out that well in the whole scheme of things. We still do have a lot of fuel left at the present moment. 38 seconds of burn. Burn, burn, burn. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Well, I mean, you know the... Hold up. You know the drill at this point. Essentially, this stage gets us into a circularized orbit. Although we don't have enough fuel for our next stage to really get us in a lunar orbit easily. Probably be relatively okay, but I hit Z instead of X at like the worst possible time there. Okay, so we want to get over here now. So I had roughly Apoapsis are going to add a maneuver. Now, we've done a few Minmus encounters now, so even though we fudged this one up pretty badly, this should be relatively okay. I'd rather encounter the moon as quickly as possible. So if we could, yeah, swing over here instead. 3 hours, that seems good to me. I'm going to burn for 19 seconds to Mars. I never realized, like, how annoying having no RCS is. It's nasty, man. We certainly have 19 seconds of fuel left, but we don't need to just get into... What am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is we don't need to simply get to the moon. We also have to stay in orbit of it. So I think we definitely botched, like, our orbital phase. We could work on our rocket design quite a lot. So at 9 seconds left, we want to burn roughly on this here. It's so, like, annoying to try to stay on the maneuver node. So I think, like, for sure, if we're gonna spend a couple of episodes doing satellites here, seems like a very sensible option. Try to get, like, some better unmanned modules that can actually use SAS, because, like, clearly I am a moron. I was actually looking at this and I thought we had, like, we're in such, like, a janky orbit. Anyway, whatever. Sure, warp me to the Mun encounter. We're in such, like, a weird inclinational orbit here. But yeah, I underestimated the amount of piloting skill, effectively, it requires to get this done. So you can definitely transmit from the moon to Kerbin easily. So I don't know what we're putting a satellite around the moon for, except to prove to, you know, everybody who laughed at us in high school that we're capable of doing it. So we're going to add a maneuver that burns retrograde. Look, is it a 10 out of 10 orbit? I would suggest no. But if it costs us, yeah, I was going to say, almost no fuel, then sign me up for this. In an hour and 40 minutes, we're going to have a dang old moon satellite set up. What do you mean no probe control? How so, though? You're out of electricity? How? What were you using your electricity for? Oh, I'm cheesed now. Yeah, this thing's adrift. No, you know, I'd like to... I can't even hit space then, I assume. I know I kind of don't want to, because if I do, it's going to be a disaster, but... What did I use my electricity for there? I just want to pop this thing, but we can't do it. So, we're going to go out, and then we're going to end up in another apoapsis around Kerbin. But we're never going to get probe control because we're out of electricity. Yeah, I cannot hit space. So this thing is essentially adrift right now. I don't know, I'm just gonna warp, like, we'll warp past the moon. I actually don't think, like, I'll ever get control of it again. Yeah, this thing's just gonna be floating around out here. I mean, it technically is a satellite that occasionally orbits the moon, but that's not good enough. So we need to rethink our rocket design, but you know what? A somewhat productive episode. I'm going to revert flight to vehicle assembly. We almost put 2 satellites in the air. We did put 1 satellite in the air. I'll be back to put this other one back up there momentarily. But for now, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for the day off. And, of course, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.